Members, it is about time. We have attained the quorum. This is the fourth special Finance Committee meeting. We're here from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. For two sessions. The Special Finance Committee is to consider the draft estimates 15-16 to make sure that the government funding proposals for 2015-16 will not exceed what is needed for the execution of government policies. Depending on the number of members, I will decide the length of member speaking time. Just a reminder that all questions to be put shall be related to the estimates. If members would like to follow up on the written replies, please quote the top right-hand corner, the reply serial number, like HAB 001. If members don't have enough time, members are welcome to put supplementary questions or take the matter up at the panel. I'd like to welcome the Secretary for Home Affairs and his team. Chairman, thank you. The Home Affairs Bureau is responsible for quite a diversified policy portfolio covering a total of 8 heads of expenditure. Our priority areas with additional resources are as follows. Youth development. The Chief Executive announced in the policy address that the government will set up a 300 million youth development fund to support innovative youth development activities which are not covered by existing schemes, including subsidy in the form of matching funds for NGOs to assist young people in starting their business. We are consulting the Commission on Youth on operational arrangements of the fund. We plan to consult the HA panel later this year. Secretary, we have the script in front of us. Well, in that case, I can do away with the reading of the script. All right, thank you. That will leave us more time. Thank you very much, Secretary. I have 10 members here. Wong Kwok-hing, Teng Ka-piu, Sin Chung-kai, Kenneth Chan, Tony J, Yu Si-wing, Ma Fung-kwok, Claudian Bo, and Zhang, Frankie Yik, Leung Kwok-hong, 4 minutes for the question and answer. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, Chairman, HAB 198, that's about the legal aid for the Secretary. Secretary, yesterday in the Oriental Daily, the front page story, it is about the abuse of legal aid. Now, the headlines said that there are Indian people coming to Hong Kong, and as soon as they hop off the plane, they make an application for cruelty, for torture claims, and they have liaised with all their lawyers in this regard. Now, they are seeking legal aid to make torture claims. In January, February, we have seen 70 or so people. Over the past 3 years, we have seen about 1,000 people doing this kind of thing. I'm not sure whether you noticed this, Secretary. According to the report, before they came to Hong Kong, there are lawyers telling the Immigration Department that their clients are on the way to Hong Kong and they're seeking claims regarding torture. Now, and this is undermining the interests of the people of Hong Kong. They're abusing the legal aid to the detriment of local people. Now, for these people or foreigners stranded in Hong Kong because of torture claims, the number is standing at something like 10,000, and the case is still outstanding. So, Mr. Secretary, are you aware of the situation? Are you aware of the reported tour? And have you conducted any review to plug the loophole? Because if these foreigners are coming to Hong Kong making torture claims and abusing our legal aid system, they will be also affecting the job situation in Hong Kong. Secretary, well, regarding legal aid, we have the director here. He can supplement in just a moment. Now, as regards to Mr. Wong's citing of the media report about a dozen or so foreigners claiming, making a torture claim in Hong Kong, like Mr. Wong said, they are suspected of abusing the situation. The whole government is very concerned about the situation. Now, I'm not suggesting that the lawyer is seeking legal aid. Now, we're talking about a dozen or so people, and I'm not sure whether he's seeking legal aid. Now, the government is very concerned about these upsurge in torture claims in Hong Kong. Now, they come to Hong Kong and want to stay here on torture claims. The number has increased rather rapidly, and this is creating pressure on Hong Kong. Now, if they get this paper of reconnaissance, they will also cause danger to Hong Kong. Mr. Teng Ka-pio, I'd like to follow up on this issue. We learned a lot from the newspaper. In the next segment, we have the Secretary for Security. Now, it says that in 2014, we have the number of non-ethnic Chinese illegal immigrants is rebounding recently. In 2014, 1,900 were intercepted. That they come to Hong Kong and they are claiming torture. And last year, and in 2014, the Immigration Department received over 3,400 non-refoulement claims, which is 2.7 times the average for 4 years before. I think this is similar to Champati. Now, there may be lawyers who will be distributing business cards to the victims of traffic accidents. They're touting for business, and if they are eligible, they will be taken to the legal aid department to make application. The same can be said about the non-refoulement claims. I think we have to look at the legal aid. I'm not saying that we should do anything about the local people, but if someone, that people cannot specify the lawyers that they will be assigned, and that will address some of the problems. All right, Director? Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Tang, for the question. Now, the suggestion is whether the applicant will lose the right to choose his own lawyers. But under the legal aid ordinance, the applicant can choose his or her own lawyers. Now, there is a point which is important to bear in mind, and that is when an applicant has picked a lawyer, there is a relationship of trust, and that would enable the cases to proceed smoothly. Now, that was the original intent. And I fully believe that the counsel in Hong Kong are objective, impartial, and if a lawyer is assigned by random, what's wrong with it? Now, why is it that there is no trust that can be established between them? Unless you want to tell me that the lawyers, the counsel, is really biased. Director, thank you very much, Mr. Tang, for his question. Now we're talking about the legal procedure. I heard what Mr. Tang said. I will consider that. Now Mr. Frankie Yik put a question, HAB 200. There are 170 cases and 60. I mean, the lawyer on the top of the list had 170 cases. The second one got 66 cases. Now maybe he has some more client, a pool of client, bigger pool of client. From social justice point of view, I think we have to do something about it. Mr. Xin Chung Kai. Paragraph 3 of the speech refers to the exchange program. $205 million will be set aside, and the number will go up from 32,000 to 70,000. It is important to understand national affairs. But when we were students, university students, we had the slogan to urge us to show concern about the nation and to know more about the nation. Now, other than knowing about the nation, I think we have to have an international perspective. And also 177, I think the reply is not really relevant to the question. The question is about the lodgings, the homestay lodgings. The idea of homestay lodgings would be like those in Cheongsha, Muiwo, and they are targeted at local people, and they are intended for local people. In recent years in Japan or even Taiwan, these homestay lodgings are getting very popular for visitors. Mr. Secretary, of so many different licenses, hostel licenses and so on, are you going to create a separate category for these kind of homestay lodgings that would be conducive to visitors to Hong Kong, not just those coming from the mainland? Will the Secretary be reviewing the licensing categories? I don't think you should be giving us all these official stock-ons like 28 days and so on. Secretary, on the first question, we do support young people to engage in exchanges internationally, and they can go to overseas countries on exchange programs. Very shortly, we have an agreement reached with the UN, and university undergraduates will be taking up internship with the UN organizations. Like Mr. Sin said, the young people will be able to broaden their international perspectives. Now, as regards to the second question, the homestay lodgings, we did talk with some of the stakeholders, in particular the Hung Yee Kuk, like in the rural areas. There are some people who would be interested in running some homestay lodgings. We are looking into this. As a first step, we have to amend the HAGAO. We noticed that the people of Hong Kong, in the face of so many visitors, are having a lot of criticism. If we create homestay lodgings, we have to bear in mind that most of the visitors might be coming from the mainland of China. So the first thing we are looking at is to amend the guest house ordinance to strike a balance between welcoming these visitors and not allowing these to disrupt people's lives. Mr. Candice Chen. I'd like to follow up on the question by Mr. Dennis Kwok, HAB 132. Now, this is about building management. Now, last year, Mr. Kwok raised a similar question. Last year, the reply is that there was no record. This year, it says that it would take a lot of manpower resources to put together information. I think this is really self-contradictory. We have 40,000 buildings with owners' corporations, and HAB is telling us that they've been visiting all these buildings. It seems to be that the Bureau is only concerned about the numbers. What have they done? What have they found out? And what sort of help were they able to offer? Now, the reply is completely silent on the minute details. How concerned are you about the situation? When your colleagues are visiting these buildings, what have you done, and what are you doing, or are you just merely making a visit, stick up a poster and call it a visit? If you don't even have any information in this regard, how can you assess whether these 40,000 visits will be useful to the situation? Now, we don't want a situation where you're going through the motion year after year and fob us off with this kind of reply. Secretary. Well, indeed, the HAD colleagues have been working very hard to visit these buildings. And they offer all the necessary assistance to the owners' corporations. Now, the local response is that the HAD staff has been working pretty hard, and they would make their visits after office hours to offer their assistance to the residents, or to help them set up the owners' corporations. Now, if we have to go into minute detail about the buildings and the work that they have done, then it would be it would take an awful lot of work to include all the minute details. I would rather them channel their energy into meeting the residents of these buildings. Now, if members are interested, we can see how we can help members understand more about the work of the frontline staff.
Mr. Chairman, well, I think he's an impressionist. His perception, his impression is that the response was good. But we know that all over Hong Kong, many owners of private buildings are concerned about the challenges in CAP 344. In fact, our ward officers have received many inquiries and complaints concerning building management. If the SHA is still happy with being an impressionist, then it is not good. You need to collect the data, and you need to collate the information so as to find out whether the visits have been useful by focusing the problems instead of just going through the motion. I suggest that you go after the EU efficiency unit to look into the matter. Next, Tony Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to follow up some of my questions. First of all, reply number HAB 106. In the government's reply in relation to the promotion of civic education and national education, well, in fact, we are told that there are different programs and different publicity sessions. It has been an ongoing job. Question for the SHA. For such programs and activities, how effective are they? And have you ever evaluated the effectiveness of such activities and programs so that we can find out whether we need to make appropriate adjustments? That's my first question. Second question is that we are all concerned about the case of the young people, and in fact, in the Secretary's speaking note, he has taken up this topic as the first item. I want to know whether you're going to fine-tune the functions of the Commission on Youth. Permanent Secretary. Second question first. The role of the Commission on Youth and the functions. Well, in the past, probably you noted that they have been holding meetings at the same time. They have carried out a lot of work. Say, for example, vetting a large number of applications for youth exchange programs and youth internship program, as well as the summer youth program. The COY has to lead many delegations to overseas countries to attend international exchange functions. So they are sort of being carried out outside the limelight of the public scrutiny. We are in the process of looking at expanding the work of the Commission on Youth in relation to the approaches and channels taken to approach the young. We'll come back to you after we have a discussion. Follow up. The first part of my question, did you review the activities? Did you evaluate the effectiveness for civic education and for committee on the promotion of civic education and the Commission on Youth? I want to know whether you have evaluated their effectiveness so as to make relevant adjustments. Well, every year we do have some changes. Say, for example, for the youth exchange program, every year we will review the destinations. For 2015-16, we are going to launch new programs, like in internship programs in Guangdong province. And then for voluntary work, again, we have carried out some changes. So the programs don't remain the same. Every year, we will fine-tune the focus. In addition, if I may also follow up on HAB 172. And that's about building management and maintenance, Part A, and that's about 2014 to 15. There were a number of cases meriting attention. Have you ever advised the complainants to lodge a complaint with the ICAC or the police in relation to the 5 of them? Yes, indeed. How many of them? All 6 of them. We have given the advice. In fact, in each and every case, we have talked to the complainants. If it is found that there is a criminal element, if it is suspicious, then we do encourage them to complain to the ICAC or the police. Mr. Yu Si-wing, HAB 193. For the year 1516, $25 million will be spent on public relations outside Hong Kong, $20 million for overseas, and then $6 million for local publicity and promotions. My question is, I wonder if this work will overlap the local and overseas publicity carried out by the Hong Kong Tourism Board. And for the promotional work, I want to know about the areas that you will be working in. The director of the ISD can give an answer. Director. To answer Mr. Yu's question, well, as far as overseas promotion is concerned, all along, the government has been liaising with the Hong Kong TB as well as the TDC. We do have close cooperation. We work like a family. In the coming year, for the $26 million to be allocated, $20 million will be spent on overseas promotion. First of all, there will be senior government officials carrying out outbound visits. We will ride on the opportunity to step up the publicity efforts. At the same time, we are going to invite VIPs from places outside of Hong Kong to come here to understand personally the situation in Hong Kong. And of course, we cover the media as well. In addition, through our economic and trade officers, we'll also be carrying out promotion events and activities in overseas countries. And then we'll also tie in with the brand Hong Kong so as to make sure that overseas citizens will understand more about Hong Kong. So it is more about emphasizing Hong Kong as an international city, our business environment, our rule of law, our infrastructure, our arts and culture. So, in fact, there is a lot of room for us to work together with the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. Thank you. Mr. Yu. Well, for officials to publicize Hong Kong while overseas, I don't think it will involve a lot of money. But then for advertisements, $20 million will be limited budget. And if the Hong Kong Tourism Board is doing it and you're also doing it, I just wonder if, in terms of the image as well as the branding, whether there is a division of labor. Director. We work through the ETOs and we do have a close liaison. And then the emphasis of our promotion will be different. For the TTC, of course, for the Hong Kong TB, of course, it will emphasize Hong Kong is a tourism attraction, attracting tourists to come here for sightseeing and shopping. For our publicity work, it is more about targeting at the business sector, and also enabling them to have an overall understanding of the development of Hong Kong, our vitality, our institutions, so that they can understand Hong Kong better. And then when it comes to their business ties and tourist attractions, there will be a positive outcome. So our emphasis will be different. When we have outbound visits by senior government officials, while they are there, we'll also try to ride on the synergy effect. So we have cooperation, and we work through the ETOs. Mr. Ma Fung Guok. Thank you, Chair. Follow up on two questions. First of all, HAB 087, and that's about the $300 million matching grant. In the admin's reply, it is said that you can only apply for the matching grants after 2 rounds of having received the springboard grants. Would that be the threshold? And I want to know whether it will become regularized. I understand that the art development matching grant is pilot scheme for the time being. I want to know how many organizations will qualify, that is, having received springboard grants for 2 rounds. P.S. Thank you, Mr. Ma, for your question. For the matching grant, it is a pilot one. And of course, when it is a pilot scheme, it means we have to check the outcome before we can regularize it. Of course, we hope that it will become a regular program. This is because we believe that it will benefit art development. As to why we have the requirement of having received 2 rounds of springboard grants, this is because the main purpose of having this scheme is to make sure that we have got the we have got candidates who are eligible. But of course, there will be other possible candidates. So it is a matter of quality assurance. That's why we want to set a threshold. We believe that for those who have received 2 rounds of springboard grants, there might be 6 or 7 of them. Probably later on, there will be more and more that can qualify. And they must be able to raise private donations because, after all, it is a matching grant scheme. And then maybe they have had experience with the Hong Kong Arts Festival, or they are one of the 9 major performing arts companies. But of course, we need to have it discussed by the relevant committee, and we will come back to the LegCo in the middle of this year. Of course, I welcome such a matching grant, but then it appears that though the demand is huge, the number of qualified candidates will be small. A lot will have to be turned away. Another question, HAB 236. I want to know how many facilities will be repaired and renovated. You only mentioned the Victoria Park swimming pool as well as the Hong Kong Museum of Art. I want to know whether there are other projects. Do you have an overall plan in relation to the repair and maintenance so as to enhance the facilities? Thank you, Mr. Ma, for your question. Well, in our answer, we talk about the ongoing projects. From time to time, we will check which facilities would require enhancement and repair. For the time being, I haven't got a list with me, but I can supplement the information later. We do have a plan that is regularly we will repair and maintain our facilities. Mr. Ma, please supplement after the meeting. Yes, as promised. Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 189. The ISD comes under the HAB, and then the ISD is responsible for producing the announcements in the public interest to be broadcast on radio and TV. Some of them have been put together very well. But then announcements in the public interest is the long title for APIs. So it is about the public interest. Now you have been publicizing that we mustn't miss the opportunity of 2017. So I think it has a political overtone, but in fact we don't allow political advertisements. You have seen a whole page newspaper advertisement by political groups saying that the government is abusing the powers. Now we are talking about the public interest. This is clear from the English rendition, though you don't see it in the Chinese rendition. So for a political reform consultation, it means that you give us real choices. But in fact, your APIs are brainwashing. You are simply trying to urge us not to miss the opportunities. In other words, you are saying that we should know how to choose. This is most outrageous. Technically, you haven't breached the rule, but Secretary, maybe you are more responsible for home affairs. You may ask me to direct a question at the Constitutional Amendment Affairs Bureau, but then the ISD comes under you. So for political ethics, for legal requirements, do you think that there is a breach? Because when we talk about that API urging the citizens not to miss the opportunity of 2017 universal suffrage, how much money has been spent on it? Are you going to withdraw that API? Secretary, the ISD is responsible for the APIs, so it's better for the director to answer the question. I just want to say that, as Ms. Mo has said, we've been working in accordance with the law, but probably DIS can give an answer. Director. Thank you, Ms. Mo, for your question. For the APIs of the government, currently they are played on the TV as well as the radio. Such are the government APIs. The APIs cover a wide range of topics. When we produce and broadcast the APIs, we have a number of conditions which have to be met. First of all, it is in the public interest. It relates to issues of public concern, or the APIs are directly related to the government policies and operational objectives. Chair, allow me to interrupt. Would you say that that API is related to government policies and operational objectives? Would you agree? Would you say that because of that, and so you're empowered to play the API? Director, all the APIs have to meet one of the three principles that I have outlined a moment ago. Now, when it comes to the actual operation, each and every API has got a relevant policy bureau that has ownership. So if the relevant bureau or department would like to publicize a message, then it will be an API. It is a waste of money. How much money has been spent? Your time is up. Dr. N. Zhang, if I may follow up, that's about torture claims. Since 2010, for torture claims, we've already spent more than $1.5 billion. And for the last 3 years, there has been an increasing number of Indians coming to Hong Kong to make a torture claim. So we've got over 1,000 Indians who are at present torture claimants in Hong Kong, and the number is being doubled all the time, year after year. So concerning this question, I'm sure the Secretary will attach a lot of importance to it. As we know that the unemployment rate in India is quite high, and for those aged between 15 and 25, the unemployment rate is even more serious, and we have got billions of Indians in their population. Even if a small number of them come, it won't be a small number. And as to the average wage, it is $1,500 per capita GDP. When they come, even for the allowances given to them, it will be more than $1,000 a month. Last year they said that that amount of money would not suffice, and they're asking for 3,000. Now they have told us that some of them have said that it's better for them to have fun in Hong Kong for a few years than sitting idle back in their hometown. They don't just draw that allowance from the government, and they can get engaged in illegal employment. If they work hard, they can easily make $10,000 a month. So if the SHA doesn't face the problem squarely, it will become a big problem for us. And in fact, we've seen claimants who have lodged a torture claim, who have been found to be involved in illegal activities. So you really have to pay attention to this problem. If they get news that it is easy to make a good living in Hong Kong, a lot of them will rush to come to Hong Kong. You have given a lot of legal aid to them, but I don't think a single Indian has succeeded in staying in Hong Kong in relation to their torture claim. In other words, it is a matter of abuse.
No one single Indian has been allowed to stay in Hong Kong. So, Secretary, I would like to ask a question on the Youth Development Fund. In your paper, you said that you will work with the NGOs. What kind of NGOs are you talking about? And you said that you would consult the Commission on Youth. Youth Development Fund. Are you going to sponsor the startup business? Well, if that is the case, why aren't you collaborating with the business associations and consult them? Chairman, in my speaking notes, when I talk about NGOs, they don't necessarily mean non-governmental organizations. I mean, they are bodies outside the government, and that includes the business bodies. I've heard views that business associations do have the expertise and they know how to do business. And if business organizations are willing to participate, I'm sure that the Commission on Youth will consider that. Mr. Frankie Yik, I would like to follow up on XJB 200. Mr. Tan Kai Piu has already raised a similar question. If you look at the list, the legal aid department does have a certain target for every law firm. Then there should not be more than 40 cases per year, and there are 19 which has exceeded the target. The first one in the list is 100. and more than 100 cases. So we are worried about trumpety activities, touting activities, and so on. The administration has said before that the number is small. Last year, together with Mr. Chan Kim-po, together with the police, we worked on some 100 cases of touting and trumpety activities. I think the situation is rather serious. So what is the administration's view on this? Another very basic question. As to my understanding, for criminal proceedings, the litigants can't choose the lawyers, but for civil cases, they can do so. So, Director of Legal Aid, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Yik, for your question. Let me try to explain. There is an indicator for every lawyer, our assigned out lawyer. Every year, they will not take on more than 45 cases. And if that number is exceeded, then a staff at the director level can make discretion and make allowance, provided that there is a very good reason. And in most of the cases, it's the applicants who choose their lawyers, and very likely the lawyers are connected in another case related to the litigant. For example, if they are concerned with the industrial compensation, and then if we have the same lawyer, then that would work to the benefit of the applicant. Now, for the first, in a case, there is a lawyer who has taken on 174 assignments. Among these, 139 are group cases. Well, they have the same legal points, and there is no need to have proceedings, and it has to do with it hasn't got anything to do with negligence and labor compensation. So the lawyer on the rank number 1, so he is involved in 39 different cases, in other words. So, well, I'd like to thank Mr. Yik and Mr. Chan, who have reminded us, and we actually looked at the situation compared to past years. The figure has gone down substantially. If you look at rank number 2, 66 cases, and many of them have to do with that the lawyer who is actually representing the labor compensation, and so he's taking on cases on negligence as well. So we don't want two different lawyers working on the same applicants. Also, together with the ICAC, we have completed a report, and we have looked at the whole system of assigned lawyer for legal aid cases. And we will be responding to the recommendations of ICAC shortly. Director, would you open this report, because I would like to have a look at it. For this report, after it has come out, we would notify you, the members, and let you know what we have done internally. Well, can he take a look at the report? Will it be submitted to the Legislative Council? And I think I will discuss with the ICAC on that. I think we can share with you the recommendations. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Mr. Leung Chi Chung. Thank you, Chairman. There is a case today about allowance for district councillors, and there was a judgment. I won't go into the details of the case. The sentencing hasn't been meted out yet. I would like to ask the HAD, when it comes to the educating the district councillors, especially when they make claims on an accountable basis, what are the guidelines? Will you be educating the district councillors on a regular basis? When I looked at the case, well, the councillor just made a very simple mistake and straightforward mistake, and it didn't have to do with any sort of interest. So the district councillor shouldn't have committed such a mistake. So on the part of the HAD, should it be doing more as far as education is concerned? That's my first question. Second question, social enterprises. The Secretary has talked about it. I think you have done a good job. 80% of the social enterprises have used the ESR program and are still continuing with their operation. The question is, they are continuing with their operation, but losses or profits incurred. And over the years, the subsidy is $180 million, and you are creating only some 2,000 jobs. So it seems rather the figures are quite disproportional. It doesn't look very reasonable to me as far as the spending is concerned. District councillors, perhaps Mr. Chan can talk about it, and social enterprises, Undersecretary. Mr. Chan, thank you, Mr. Leung, for your question. Allowance for district councillors. We want to make the rules as simple as possible and as easily comprehensible as possible. Every year we do a detailed review, and before each term, a new term, we would be reviewing all the guidelines and the regulations. And before the start of every new term, we would hold seminars, workshops to let district councillors understand the regulations for applying for allowances and making claims. We had, apart from these seminars, we've also been working on the assistance of the district councillors. The district councillors are very busy all the time, and the assistants are doing a lot of work for them. So, and then for the next term, we also hope that we would be organizing regular forums for the district councillors to keep them abreast of the latest requirements. We would also be giving a lot more opportunities for the assistants to learn about the guidelines. Undersecretary. Thank you, Mr. Yik, for your comments. You have two questions on social enterprises. The first one is about there are some 80% of SEs now still continuing with their operations. In our latest report, 2/3 of them have reached or exceeded their targets, and 30% are earning a profit. So that's the profit situation. And the second question is about $180 million. Does it mean that we are just creating 2,000 odd jobs? Well, we are just talking about the positions for the disadvantaged group, and overall there are a total of 3,800 jobs. And there is also a social impact apart from the jobs, and we can foster a caring culture. Well, let me cite a simple example. Well, we don't need your example. We are running out of time. Dr. Helena Wong, I have two questions. Well, in your speaking notes, you talked about the funding scheme for youth exchange in the mainland. During the umbrella movement, a lot of young students, including those from the Scholarism and Federation of Students, they planned to go to the mainland to meet with the state leaders, NPC delegates, to reflect their demands on true universal suffrage. Even if they hold a valid home return permit, their entry was rejected. So I want to ask HAB, do you have any plans in the next year to assist these students to go to the mainland for exchange? Is there a blacklist of students who have participated in the umbrella movement? Does it mean that they can never get a chance to go and have exchange on the mainland? Secretary, funding scheme for youth exchange and youth internship on the mainland. Well, that's been ongoing for many years. This is a standing schemes for us, and the objective is to have young people in Hong Kong to broaden their horizon and raise their awareness about the situation on the mainland. As for specific individuals and groups who may have certain political objectives or actions to take on the mainland to achieve their specific objectives. So, well, those would not be covered under the youth exchange program. I know all these. Would you be allocating resources? You would not give up on any single individual young person, right? So if they would like to go to the mainland and have exchange, this group who has been rejected entry, can you help them to go to the mainland for exchange? Well, the aim of the exchange scheme has sort of designated scope and target groups and so on. So do you mean you are going to give up? Well, we have designated exchange groups on the mainland. I know that some legislative councillors would like to do exchanges on the mainland too. And if they do it for some specific purposes or objectives, and the SARG, not just the HAB, will be more than happy to help them. So this is exactly my question. You are the HAB in the SARG. Would you be helping these young people to do exchange on the mainland? Well, you should not put any limits or restrictions on the topics to be exchanged. You shouldn't be doing that. Would you be helping this group? Secretary. Well, we have an open mind towards exchanges. There should not be any restricted scope. But then we must have some sort of constraints. Well, do you mean that those young persons, students who have been declined entry, they can never go to the mainland for exchange? Well, we don't mean that. For anyone who wishes to do exchange on the mainland, we have an open attitude towards them. Chairman, he hasn't answered me. Secretary, would you be proactive in helping young students who have been declined entry to the mainland? Would there be a special scheme for them to go to do exchange on the mainland? Secretary? Well, my answer has to do with the draft estimates, and that the funding scheme on youth exchange mentioned in that draft estimates. Well, I don't believe that your budget will provide for young students to go and meet the state leaders. Well, I'll try to answer Dr. Wang's questions. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, Mr. Zhang, you haven't answered Dr. Wang's question. You are the organizer. Well, the young people may say something that you dislike hearing. Well, back then, in those days, you were telling the judge of the court that he was someone from the colonial government. Well, you didn't bring him to see the Queen, right? If young people participate in your funding scheme, but then the mainland authority said, well, no way, because this person shouldn't be given entry. Well, you should fight for their right till the end. I think it's a matter of attitude. Well, of course, you wouldn't be saying to the mainland authorities who should not be given entry and shouldn't be given entry. This is, after all, a learning experience for them, and you should allow them to go. The gist of the issue is your attitude as a secretary for Home Affairs. You are an official here, and you should tell the mainland authorities, even if this young person has participated in Occupy Central, he is not a criminal. He should be given the right to go to the mainland. He does have that right. I think you should do that, because you yourself once were discriminated against and persecuted. And of course, your persecution was much more severe, and you are the 400% political convict. I would like to raise a question on legal aid. I have a question for the Director of Legal Aid. I think Chiang Tai-shing should not be looking after the portfolio of legal aid. Many members have said that the Director of Legal Aid should be randomly assigning out the cases to the lawyers. Do you think that's feasible? Well, under the basic law provisions, I do have the right to choose my own lawyer. So it shouldn't be the case that if I seek legal assistance, then I'm deprived of my right under the basic law. Even if this person is a Hong Kong resident or not a Hong Kong resident, he should still have that right. I don't think it's right. It's inconceivable that you are assigning a specific solicitor to the applicant of legal aid just because he is seeking for legal aid. Now, if some solicitor is involved in touting or charity activities, well, then you should do investigations. And you should not be going against the basic law. You should not change a principle commonly adopted internationally. So please answer me whether the members are right in their remarks. Director of Legal Aid, Mr. Kwong, thank you, Mr. Lang, for your according to Section 13 of the Legal Aid Ordinance, every applicant has a right to choose his own lawyer. Well, that comes with the reason. This is a basic human right. It's not like what they are doing on the mainland authorities. If there is corruption, then you should catch those who are involved in corruption, and the director of legal aid should not be going against the basic law provisions. Mr. Michael Tian, I have two questions. I have a question on the future structure of the Commission on Youth and also the building ordinance. I've been seeing some ridiculous situation in the community. The CPG and the SARG fully support the 2017 one man, one vote for returning the CE by universal suffrage. And the Commission on Youth is playing a very important part. We all know that. How come that if all the members are appointed by the government? And, well, these members may not have an overall view of Hong Kong affairs. I think you should allocate 1/4 of the seats to be returned by universal suffrage among the young people so that more views can be brought into the Commission. I've raised the same question in the CE Q&A session. The CE said that he has heard my view and he's considering it. Secretary, would you consider that? Would you be adding some democratic elements to this Commission on Youth? Building ordinance. The OCs, the conveners of the OCs have too much power. And maybe the OC chairman finds a time for meetings, which, is not convenient for everyone, and he's asking people to give him proxies and so on. And the HAD posts a notice on the notice board. Well, who is going to look at it? So I've asked you to explain to the residents what's the meaning of proxies, but, well, I don't think you are doing it. So I've talked to your colleagues. Mr. Chan, you should draw up a certain ratio between those who are present and the ratio of the number of proxies.
And the power of the convener should be properly restricted. I think you have to make the residents understand what the proxies are all about and also the importance of being present. This has to do with resources. We support more resources being devoted to this to make sure that the owners' corporations are set up properly. Can you respond to the first question about the Youth Commission? Will there be any democratic elements introduced to it? Secretary, Mr. Tin said that the Chief Executive is considering that. This is the latest state of play. What about the second question? Owners' corporation. Mr. Tin, are you saying that the Chief Executive is indeed considering that? Has he talked with you about it, Secretary? Well, this is being considered. Well, you haven't been consulted. What about your position? Have you got any position? What's the take on this, Secretary? Chairman, we have just appointed the new term of members, the whole term, all the members. What is the tenure? 2 years. So there will not be any democracy introduced to it. Is that right? Is that what you're saying, Secretary? Chairman, as of now, we don't have this idea, Mr. Tin. Well, the chief executive was very quick with it, and he just made the appointment. Secretary, I think this is only the argument advanced by Mr. Tin. Mr. Christopher Zhong. Mr. Ip Kin Yun. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on the question raised by Mr. Michael Tin. Other than youth policy, we also should look at civic education. Has the study been completed, or will there be any further studies? Secretary. Chairman, the Youth Commission and the Committee on Civic Education have started a new term in April. We have appointed all the members. So in the near term, we don't have any electoral arrangement. Now, if members want members to be returned by election, members should make the suggestion. Mr. Yip, is it the case that you have considered that, but the study has already been completed? Is that right, Secretary? Chairman, in this term, we're still doing by appointment, Mr. Yip. Now, we have been through so much. We hope that in these two committees that there will be more young people, and young people with a wide variety of views. I think we cannot have any more expectation of that. Is that right, at least in this term? Secretary? Chairman, the Youth Commission or the Committee on Promotion of Civic Education are represented by people from different backgrounds, and they are sufficiently representative. Mr. Yip. Chairman, if I may put another question, talking about youth work, one of the most important areas is exchanges. Now, it's okay to have exchanges with mainland, but I think that the division should be cast further beyond. Now, in our university days, we had the slogan about showing concerns about the mainland of China and have a broader perspective of the world. Many members came through this system. I think having an international perspective would be an important subject. Now, today we're talking about the draft estimates. In the estimates, are we going to encourage the young people to have a broader perspective other than making exchanges with the mainland? There are some questions like HAB 061 talks a lot about exchanges and internship with the mainland. My question is, other than the mainland, are there exchanges with other jurisdictions? What is the proportion of funding or ratio of funding between mainland and other jurisdictions? Permanent Secretary. Now, we have an IYEP, an International Youth Exchange Program. We'd like to expand the number. Each year we have 150 or so joining this program. Now, why is it that we have some limitation? Because with overseas countries, we do so on an exchange basis. We send some to their countries, and they do so reciprocally. Right now we have 5 countries. The resources are not the problem. If there are more countries willing to join, we're prepared to expand the number. Mr. Ip Kwok Him. Indeed, the HAB, other than the Education Bureau, is responsible for young people's work. I'd like to put this to the Secretary. That we saw what happened last year, the Occupy movement. A lot of young people had a flimsy understanding of the rule of law. Now, Hong Kong is so successful because of the rule of law, and also young people's understanding of the nation. They is rather limited. They don't have any national awareness. As a bureau responsible for young people issue, you have the obligation to do something about the situation. I put a question here, HAB 33. I'd like to follow up on this question. Now, in this question, I asked the Secretary what specific plan does the Secretary have regarding youth. I've been given a reply here. Now, other than the budget for national education, $39.6 million. You also emphasize the exchange programs, and in the first paragraph, you specifically mention the promotion of the basic law and the production of television programs and publications to enhance public understanding of the various aspects of our country. I'd like the Secretary to be more specific with regard to the $39.6 million. Is it solely devoted to exchanges? Now, for these $40 million, is it going to be used on other programs as well? As far as the young people are concerned, they have to know about history. They have to know about respect for others. Are you going to educate the young people about what happened in the past? It's only when they know about the past that they will know about the present. So do you have any plans in these other areas as well? Permanent Secretary? Now, for these $39 million, a lot of it is going to be spent on the youth exchanges. About 7 to 8 billion will be used for promotion, and also the civic education activities for the 18 districts. Now, the honourable member talked about the programs. We hope to take advantage of the mass media, the APIs, and so on to promote civic education. Now, we have the theme of loving family, loving Hong Kong, and loving the nation. We will be publishing some literature, and we will also promote respect and accommodation, being caring, and so on. Now, these are the themes at the Civic Education Committee. Would there be any specific programs together with the TV, like some programs to educate them about the past? Permanent Secretary, as the Secretary said, a new term of COY has been appointed. We will be talking to them about the way forward in the coming years. Mr. Chen Kim-po, I'd like to follow up on question 200. That the Legal Aid Department will be appointing lawyers who are professional to deal with both criminal and civil cases, and the litigants will be given proper protection. It's got nothing to do with human rights whatsoever. Now, members talked about the selection of lawyers, and there may be conflict of interest. In some cases, they are creating cases for the lawyers, and this is very much a loophole. Why is it that for civil cases people can choose lawyers but not so much for criminal cases? Have you considered whether there are any problems with that? Will there be any changes? Mr. Kwong? Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much, Mr. Chen, for the question. In Hong Kong, under the legal aid ordinance for criminal cases, the litigants can also pick and choose their lawyers. Now, under the legal aid ordinance for civil cases, it is stipulated that under Section 13, it provides that they do have the right to make the choice. Mr. Chen, so they can make this selection for criminal and civil cases. Indeed, there is no difference at all, unless they have a very good reason. If this is detrimental to the litigant, then we would ask the applicant to choose another lawyer. In our role, we have quite a lot of lawyers. They don't have to specify one particular lawyer. Mr. Chen, how can you make sure that the lawyers so appointed will not delay the cases or will not be acting improperly? How can you monitor the situation to make sure that they'll be acting as expected? Director? Chairman, we do have a monitoring system. We have a senior lawyer who would be monitoring the progress to see whether there is any delays or whether someone is going through any procedures that they're not supposed to do. If there are complaints from the applicant or from anybody, we will have to act on them. Mr. Chen, now how many complaints will it take before you would blacklist them, or will you be acting against them? Director, if there is a complaint that is substantiated, then we will have a steering committee that will be looking at the situation, and there will be representation by the lawyer. And if this is not acceptable, then he will be put in an adverse list, and we will let the applicants know about this, what happened. Any further questions? We have completed the first round. If there are no more questions, I'll move on to the second round. Any more for the first round? Dr. Priscilla Leung. I think at the AJLS panel, we did put a similar question regarding legal aid. It seems that in terms of expenditure, a lot of the money goes to judicial review cases. The legal community or the civic society did say that if certain cases take up a higher proportion, and if these cases are concentrated in the hands of certain law firms, then the legal aid department will be outsourcing the cases to the council to decide whether a certain case would warrant legal aid. Some lawyers will never get the legal aid cases. The distribution seems to be rather uneven. Perhaps the director will give us more statistics, or in the coming year, will the situation be more reasonable for criminal cases, civil cases, or judicial review? Would there be an even distribution, or will they be concentrated in the hands of a number of law firms? One single lawyer can have 45 cases. A barrister can be given 25 legal aid cases per annum. Now, for a law firm to have 45 cases, and sometimes the cases may be referred to their assistants, but this is not fair at all. Shouldn't there be an even distribution of the cases? Director? Thank you very much, Dr. Priscilla Leung. Now, when it comes to legal aid, the underlying principle is that once someone has passed the merit test or the means test, then we will not put a cap on the litigation fees. Now, the second thing I'd like to say is that I don't have the statistics with me now, but for judicial review cases, the expenditure takes up a very small percentage of the total budget. It's not really a staggering amount. Over the past 12 months, we have on record the barristers or the lawyers that have the highest number of cases. The number has been coming down substantially. At the moment, over the past year, we saw 45 cases. Now we are talking about something like 10 lawyers. Dr. Priscilla Leung, in order that people don't get the perception that things are not evenly distributed, that we have so many lawyers taking up these cases, there may be championship involved, and lawyers may be recommended, that there may be lawyers with the same expertise. They may have the same seniority. There should be a rota system for the lawyers. And I think that would make it fairer, and that you can have a different rota for different expertise or different years of seniority, and that would make it fairer for the lawyers concerned. Mr. Lee Chuk-yin, Chairman, the Tin Shui Wai swimming pool, I'm not sure about the progress. Can you tell us whether this is going to be getting underway? In Tin Shui Wai, they have a very small substandard pool at the moment. They don't have a standard proper swimming pool to serve the population there. At what stage is the swimming pool in at the present moment? Second, in the budget, there are many items that have circumvented the Finance Committee. One of them is the Museum of History. It is only right that the Finance Committee looks at the funding. Why is it that the government is spending so much money refurbishing the Museum of History? If my memory serves me right, it is about $400 million. Why does the government go to such expenses? Now, is there any new policy, any new direction for the museum? Chairman.
Director of the LCSD. Yes, Ms. Michelle Lee. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your question. Second question first. That's about the updating of permanent exhibitions. The international practice is that if an exhibition has been going on for more than 15 years, we need to update it so as to make it more attractive. And in fact, we can make use of new approaches like multimedia so as to enrich the content and enrich the presentation so that this is more in line with the social changes. For our estimates, we've suggested that 4 museums, as a result of having had the exhibitions going on for more than a decade, require updating, like the Museum of History, the Science Museum, the Museum of Heritage, as well as the Museum of Coastal Defense. We are updating the museums, and in fact, the proposal on the 17th of November 2014 had been presented to the panel on Home Affairs for information, and we have secured the support and would like to carry out the refurbishment or the updating ASAP. And we have to secure the assistance of our experts, and we have also got advisory committee members that can give input to us so that we can first of all carry out a study, and we will also want to have a more in-depth look about the presentation. We want to start the work ASAP. This is because for the museum history, in particular for the History of Hong Kong exhibition, it has been there for more than 13 years since its first inception. So it is the right time to start the work soon. What we can say is that in the process, we'll be cautious, we'll be professional, and we can benefit from the input from many experts. As to the first question, and that's about the swimming pool. Well, we understand that for Yuen Long district, in particular for Tin Shui Wai, there is a strong aspiration for a swimming pool, and we've been liaising with the district. We hope that as far as the project design is concerned and the details are concerned, we can have the district input. All right, time is up. The next session will start at 3:30.